It started with a letter, one simple letter. But by the end of this story, it would expose secrets, divide a community, and go viral across the internet. No one expected that a small neighborhood disagreement would turn into a national discussion about power, control, and freedom. The neighborhood looked perfect from the outside. Clean streets, well-kept lawns, matching house colors, calm families. Everything seemed peaceful. That was the image the Homeowners Association wanted to protect. The HOA had rules. Everyone knew that. Rules about lawn height, fence design, paint colors, parking, even garden decorations. Most people followed them without complaining. That's how it had always been. But something changed when a new board was elected. At first, no one noticed anything unusual. Meetings were still held. Emails were still sent. Everything looked normal. But slowly residents began receiving more warnings than before. Small things were suddenly violations. A slightly different shade of paint, a security camera facing the driveway, a decorative plant near the mailbox. Each came with a notice. Each carried a warning of fines. People felt confused, some felt targeted, but most stayed quiet. Nobody wanted trouble. Nobody wanted to argue with the HOA. After all, they controlled approvals, and they had authority to impose penalties. Then one resident decided to ask a simple question. Daniel had moved into the neighborhood just months earlier. He wasn't loud. He wasn't rebellious. He was just observant. He noticed that certain homes were receiving warnings repeatedly, while others with similar changes were not. He checked the official HOA guidelines. Something didn't match. At the next meeting, Daniel raised his hand and politely asked why enforcement seemed stricter recently and whether there was updated documentation for the new rules. The room went silent for a moment. The board president responded calmly, saying the board was maintaining community standards and protecting property values. That sounded reasonable, but Daniel didn't stop there. He requested transparency regarding recent changes and voting records. That's when the atmosphere shifted. The board seemed uncomfortable. They said the information was internal. They suggested residents should trust their elected representatives. But trust is built on transparency, and residents started feeling that something wasn't adding up. After the meeting, more neighbors approached Daniel privately. They shared their own experiences. Some had received unexpected fines. Others were told to remove items without clear explanation. A few mentioned that appeals were being ignored. That's when a group of residents began reviewing the HOA bylaws together. They discovered that certain enforcement changes required a formal vote from the entire membership, but they couldn't find any record of such a vote taking place. This raised serious questions. Was the board acting within its authority, or had decisions been made without proper approval? When residents requested meeting minutes, they received delayed responses. When they requested financial reports, they were told to submit written forms. When they asked for clarification, they were reminded that violating rules could lead to penalties. It felt like pressure, not open discussion. Just pressure. The tension grew. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel received a formal notice accusing him of disrupting community harmony and undermining board authority. The letter stated that continued questioning could result in additional fines. When neighbors read the letter, they were shocked. Daniel hadn't broken any physical rule. He had asked for transparency. That's all. The message felt clear: stay quiet. But silence can create fear, and fear can create unity. Instead of backing down, residents decided to organize. They created a shared document to collect information. They saved copies of letters. They reviewed meeting recordings. They compared timelines. The pattern became difficult to ignore. Certain homes were targeted more frequently. These homes often belonged to residents who had questioned the board in the past. The community realized this wasn't random enforcement. It appeared selective. As discussion spread, the HOA attempted to remind residents about the consequences of spreading false information. Emails warned that public criticism could result in legal action. Some residents felt intimidated. Others felt motivated. Then came the turning point. Daniel attended another meeting, but this time he wasn't alone. The room was full. More residents attended than ever before. Many were recording the meeting on their phones, calmly, respectfully, just documenting. Daniel presented the compiled information. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult anyone. He simply laid out the timeline of rule changes, voting requirements, and inconsistencies in enforcement. He asked one clear question: where is the official record of the vote that authorized these new penalties? There was no immediate answer. The board said they would review the matter. But residents now had something powerful: evidence and unity. Soon after, the situation escalated further when additional fines were issued to several outspoken homeowners. This triggered wider attention. One resident shared their experience on social media. They posted documents, timelines, and meeting excerpts. The post gained traction quickly. People outside the neighborhood began discussing it. Some shared similar experiences with their own HOAs. The conversation expanded beyond one community. It became about transparency in local governance. Local reporters noticed the story. Questions were raised publicly. The HOA board issued a statement claiming that all actions were within their rights, and that misinformation was spreading. But the documentation told a different story. The growing attention forced the board to call for an independent review of their procedures. Legal experts were consulted. Residents requested a full audit of decisions made in the past year. The process took time, but during that period enforcement paused. The neighborhood felt relief for the first time in months. When the review results were eventually discussed, several procedural gaps were identified. Some decisions had not followed the required voting protocol. Recommendations were made to correct governance procedures and ensure proper transparency in the future. The board agreed to revise internal processes. Fines that were improperly issued were reconsidered. Clearer communication channels were established. Official voting records were made more accessible to members. The conflict didn't destroy the neighborhood. In fact, it changed it. Residents became more involved in community decisions. Meetings were better attended. Rules were discussed openly. Transparency improved, and the story spread online. What started as a small disagreement became a viral example of how communication, documentation, and calm persistence can lead to accountability. Daniel never wanted fame. He never wanted conflict. He simply believed that asking respectful questions should not lead to punishment. In the end, the neighborhood learned something important. Power works best when it is transparent. Authority works best when it is accountable. And communities work best when residents are informed and involved. The HOA did not disappear. The board did not collapse. But the culture changed. Silence was no longer the norm. Participation was. And that's why the story went viral. Because people everywhere recognized a simple truth. When a group tries to silence questions, the questions only grow louder. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one person willing to ask, "Can you show us the record?" That question didn't create chaos. It created clarity. And clarity changed the neighborhood forever.